Thank you for having me. My name is Carie Lewis Carlson, and I just recently started my own consulting firm. It's just me, and I'm focusing on strategic social media consulting as well as some other digital marketing offerings. So I spent 11 years at the Humane Society of the United States. 9 of those years were managing, building the social media strategy and presences there. And then the last 2 years, I went on to manage the entire digital department, which included mobile, web, email, peer-to-peer fundraising, and other things. So I was asked to talk to you guys today about social media strategy and measurement. These are two topics that I'm actually really excited to kind of share my experiences with you guys. So I mentioned I recently quit my soul-sucking full-time job of over a decade to do my own thing. And I know a lot of you kind of are in the same boat, kind of going on your own. And I'm really excited to kind of be in this space now. So I like to start with this statistic. 87% of people unlike a brand's Facebook page because they post too much. And that's followed only by the content was boring. So it's really important that you have a social media strategy for yourself. And if you're working on social media with other clients or whatnot, and not just posting willy-nilly, unplanned, without a strategy, without goals, and just kind of wing it, basically. Social media is more advanced now. People expect you to, have certain information and act a certain way on social. And so it's really important to have that strategy. So the answer to kind of figuring that out is a content strategy. And I know that a lot of you are familiar with content strategies, websites, other mediums, super important for social media too. And it really should be different for every single platform. What I've found is that in working at the Humane Society and also with some of the clients that I'm working with now, that different audiences hang out on different platforms. So it's really important that you not just have one blanket strategy and kind of broadcast to every single platform. And you really should put them in writing so they're easy to refer back to. It's declarative. You have a strategy. Here it is. You can refer back to it when you need to be able to regain your focus. So there is actually one thing that's the same on every single platform, and that is that it's all about your audience and not about you. And this is something that I've really struggled with at the Humane Society of the United States. In fact, in 11 years, I don't think I fully accomplished this, is making people understand that it's not a broadcast medium. It is really about providing value, serving the audience that you have there, defining them, defining your goals, and giving them content that provides value to what they're looking for and builds a connection with you so that when they need something that you're offering, they remember you and they remember how helpful you were. So this is super basic diagram, but I love it because I kind of lived my life by it while I was HSUS. I believe that the golden rule for social content is finding that sweet spot between what you're doing as a business and what people are already talking about or interested in. So you can post stuff about what you're doing and you can post stuff about what people are already talking about. But that middle ground is really where your social content, most of it, should come from. So in terms of separate platform strategies, obviously we start with Facebook. That's most likely where most of your audiences and your clients' audiences are, especially if they skew older. And there are 2.3 billion people on Facebook now. So I generally recommend that you start with Facebook. Now, this may not apply to certain niche audiences. Let's say if you're a brand that targets Generation Z, and you're a fashion brand or a pop culture kind of brand, you might want to consider going the Instagram and Snapchat route first. But for most people and most businesses, Facebook is where you're going to start. And there's kind of 3 tiers of advice that I offer for Facebook. One is to be relevant. I think that the most important thing you can frame your content around in Facebook is relevancy. Because when your content is relevant to your audience, they're going to see themselves in it, and they're more likely to share it with their friends and family as well. And that kind of creates that domino effect of reach. So inserting your work into what people are already talking about is a way to be relevant. Now, that's not to say you should jump on every single trending topic on Facebook and try and insert your brand or what you're doing into that. It really does have to be that middle ground that I talked about before. The next thing is be engaging. You should absolutely answer everybody that comes to you on Facebook and really any other platform as well with a legitimate question or concern. And I say that kind of add on to it because there's a lot of trolls and a lot of troublemakers and a lot of people you'll just never kind of change, especially if you're in a vertical like a nonprofit that works on controversial issues. And so the main thing is to make sure that if somebody is coming to you with a question that is about your brand, that is about the topic or cause that you work on, that you're answering everybody. And a lot of people are overwhelmed by this and they say, I just don't have enough time for that. I'm going to get into this a little bit later, but you've got to make time for it, especially now, because social media is not something that is going away, and people have this expectation of you to be interactive in these spaces. And then be dynamic. Nobody wants to read your press release. Get creative and use video and photos to tell your story. It is true that Facebook favors, at least for now, video in the newsfeed. And so if you can translate your content into a video, and I have a slide later with kind of what makes a good video, but it's things like it's under a minute long, it captures you in the first 3 seconds. That's a really good way to capture people's attention and to create what I call thumb stoppers. So when you're scrolling, somebody's scrolling through their news feed and they see your piece of content, you want them to stop basically and pay attention to what you're talking about. So on Twitter, for HSUS, we found that Twitter was primarily a customer service and relationship building platform. So it's important to kind of take a step back and listen first and see what your audience, as well as people, things related to your business on Twitter first before starting to broadcast. Totally different audience, so it needs a totally different strategy. And in my experience with HSUS, the most important things were to be timely, so to make sure that you are talking about things that are happening now. Twitter is constant. It's all about trending topics and hashtags that people are glomming onto, and so timeliness is number one. Again, be responsive. Twitter's another platform where people expect interaction, not just information. And so it's important to respond to everybody. And then kind of a side thing for Twitter is be quotable. You want to get retweets again, so your content kind of multiplies in the space outside of just the audience that you have already acquired. And a good way to do that is to be quotable. And that can be when you're presenting somewhere live, when you are giving a webinar. I actually have used this technique in this presentation at the very end. And also just in general, pulling takeaways and quotes out of the content that you've developed and are sharing. And for Pinterest, it's all about inspiration. So you need to adapt your content into ways that people actually use it in their everyday life, and it needs to be done visually. This graphic on the left-hand side of the page is a good example of what I see a lot of bloggers and content marketers doing, is creating specific graphics just for the Pinterest share, the Pinterest pin. And so this graphic is usually embedded within the content that you have, and it is the piece, the image piece that is pinned when somebody saves your content. So it's not just an image, it's got a couple of images, it's really cute. It's got a URL on it, and it's got a bold title. And this is kind of the format of a lot of images you'll see on Pinterest. So optimizing your content for the medium, again, is super important. So thinking about content that works for Pinterest, anything how-to related, life hacks, so things that make life easier, more fulfilling, more pretty, anything, again, inspirational is going to do really well on Pinterest. And a good kind of rule of thumb with Pinterest content is asking yourself, would you want to bookmark this? Because that's essentially what Pinterest is. It's an inspiration board or collection of boards that you bookmark because you're interested in saving it for later, or reading it in addition to a group of like-minded content. So with Instagram, I used to say, just post pretty pictures, but really people are killing it on Instagram now and developing new clients and sharing their work and inspiring others. So it really is similar to Pinterest in that you want to inspire people. For Instagram, there's this entertainment factor. So something that makes you laugh, you'll want to reshare or comment on. Or teach me something, and it has to be done through a gorgeous photo. And that way, if somebody is a potential client of yours and is looking at your Instagram feed, if you're able to produce this good kind of valuable content, they'll remember you or feel connected enough with you for when they do need your service or interested in your product, they'll remember you. And they'll come back to you in the future. And that's where I see most people using Instagram well, how they're using it. It's not exactly these direct cold leads. It's through continuous cultivation and strategy so that people remember them. And for Snapchat, I could probably do a whole half hour on Snapchat alone, but it's important to tell a story, especially if you're doing so as a brand. So this kind of series of snaps can tell a really good story about what you do, how you have an impact on people or the world or whatever it may be. And you can do that through a couple of different stages. So previewing what's about to happen, capturing something happening in real time, that's the key piece of Snapchat. Getting creative with it is another kind of unique selling point of Snapchat, is you're able to draw on it and use emojis and Bitmojis and things like that. And then at the end, this is how you use Snapchat strategically, is presenting the ask, telling people what you want them to do. So there's an example on the right of the screen here that we did for HSUS. It says, swipe up to see our Amazon wish list and helped us continue to care for the dogs that you just saw us talk about that we rescued in this series of snaps. So telling a story, ending with a call to action. Basic storytelling, it can be done and done successfully through social media platforms like Snapchat. So a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. I barely have time for Facebook. How do I know which platforms to be on? I'm only one person. I kind of alluded to this before, but start where your audience already is. Most people, that's going to be Facebook. Get really good at that. Get a strategy. Make it tie to your goals, report on what you're doing. Once you've got a grasp on that, then you can move on to testing and tinkering with newer platforms. Don't fall into shiny object syndrome of thinking you have to be on Snapchat just because that's the new cool thing and everybody else is. You will fall flat if you kind of rush into it like that. So make sure you're kind of doing it in a planned out strategic way. and evaluate what platforms you're going to expand to as your time and your resources allow. If you can get additional staff, interns, volunteers to help with kind of the platform research and the strategy building piece of it, that'll help you kind of expand your ability to move on to additional platforms. And remember that some networks take more work and time than others. I absolutely think that Facebook and Twitter take more time than Instagram and Snapchat because there's that customer service or more of a customer service aspect to them. So it's not like you develop this strategy for Facebook and you're like, oh my God, I have to do all of this all over again. I don't have enough time. It's going to take less time than it did to really master Facebook. So here's the thing is that you have no choice anymore about being on social and being responsive and strategic about social, because business is social now. Not a fad, not something that's going to go away. The social internet, I love this quote, the social internet has permanently shifted the balance of power between individuals and institutions. Adapt or die. So there are companies like Kodak who are very famous for not adapting to the way that people use technology and use their products and other products in the space, and they die. And you don't want to be one of those people, and you don't want your clients to be those people. Now, Uber is an example of a company that, granted, was built within the technological revolution, but they do a really good job of taking how people use technology and then adapting their product to it. And they're always updating it, they're always changing it and tinkering with it. And you know, the basis of this is that people don't need libraries and banks and other these big institutions anymore for access to information or services. Most of this stuff can be able to be done on the internet now. And that is driving kind of this social internet revolution. Here's another one of my favorite quotes. You may not have time for social media, but social media has plenty of time for you. So what this means is, you know, you've got to figure out some time management ways that you can fit this into your day, because the internet's going to keep on moving without you. And if a crisis is going on, whether it be with you or with a client or whatever, you need to be a part of that conversation and to know what's going on and to be prepared. This is an example of why HSUS, while I was there, I really pushed that you have to monitor and respond to every single comment. We actually got a lot of people reporting animal abuse and dogs in hot cars, for example, via Twitter. And this used to drive me crazy because I'm like, why don't you people call your local animal control or go into the store or, you know, take some kind of immediate action? But the internet is the place that a lot of people think of first when they're in a crisis situation. So it's really important for us to have talking points on these kind of things ready and be monitoring quickly enough so that we can save an animal's life, basically. So now what I would suggest that a lot of you think about doing is writing out your content strategies for each platform. You know, some people have I actually had a one-pager at HSUS that just outlined audience, goals, measurement, KPIs, how you decide what to post. Does it go through kind of like a filter of, does this, is this represented graphically? Does this tie to fundraising? You know, just kind of like a checklist of how you decide what works for you. Over time, figuring out what kind of content does and doesn't work. I have a slide in here that kind of goes through at HSUS. I would say, leave your ego-driven content, how great HSUS is, at the door. Put it on the website if you need to. Do not put it on social media, because those kind of pieces of content don't get any interaction. They don't get any interest, and Facebook's algorithm will punish you if you continue to put out content that no one interacts with. And then any other kind of MOs when it comes to social media. For example, one of my MOs, the things that I kind of lived by at HSUS, was that every post on social media had to provide some kind of value to the fans, and most often that was in the form of something they could do, something actionable. So anything kind of that you kind of live and die by, I would put in this content strategy document as well. Getting goal agreement is really important, whether you're working with a partner or a boss or a client. And I gotta be honest, at HSUS, I never fully achieved this. I spent 11 years trying to, but when you're working with a big organization, it's really hard to get everybody on the same page, and to kind of break down those assumptions and the way we've always done things, especially when you get up towards the executive suite, with people who have been there for a long time, even before email, certainly before social media, and they're accustomed to doing business a certain way. So something that I definitely recommend spending time in. It will make everything else you do in social media a lot easier. Getting that goal agreement of why you're using social media. I had some success with this at HSUS because I was able to kind of work with my boss to understand that we were on social media for fundraising and advocacy purposes. The reason I say I never fully achieved this was because I was not able to get that all the way up to the C-suite, and a lot of them wanted us to just post press releases and news content, and it was more of a news being a news development organization. And so that's why I say I never fully achieved it, but I did make some progress in getting my boss on board. One of the things I like to do for my clients is develop a content bank, and this saves time because you can develop some ideas for evergreen content that if you need to get approved by a compliance department or a client or whoever, you can do that ahead of time. And so this is kind of content that really kind of works anytime. It's general, but it also provides value and is people focused. And so for us at HSUS, I had a content bank of rescues we had done in the past, days, these what I call fluff days, these calendar days like National Dog Day and things like that. September was always National Pet Preparedness Month, and so I would have content available and approved ahead of time for that. Anything you could develop that you could do so ahead of time, get it approved, and have it for when you may have a slow day or a holiday or whatever. This really helps. Although the best content is usually timely, so it kind of capitalizes on that middle ground. You're not always going to have something in the news or something that people are talking about that's related to your brand. So that's why this content bank is helpful. And remember that people want to be a part of something. So when you're posting on social media, it's less about, again, look at this great thing we're doing. For example, with HSUS, we saved these 700 cats from this hoarding case, which is a lot of cats. We tied it back to the money that people donated that allowed us to save those cats. So it was actually a part of the Pepsi Refresh project, and that's taking it back quite a few years. We won the money, asking people to vote for us. We use that money to save these cats. And so tying it back to, did you vote for us? See how the money we saved thanks to you helped us do this thing. And then of course, no presentation would be complete without an example from Charity Water. I love their impact reports that they give to donors about what their donations were able to do and where and how many people they served. And they do it in this great kind of clipboard graphical format that I just love. Here's a slide I mentioned on what makes a great Facebook video. So puppies obviously help, but they're not the only reason. You need a short but clickable headline. So you want people to be able to be interested enough to play the video. It needs to capture your attention in the first 3 seconds. Not a lot of time, but that's how much of people's attention span you have when they're scrolling through the news feed. The immediate reaction when you see this in the first 3 seconds is, oh, look at this puppy. Videos should absolutely be direct uploaded to Facebook. Never post YouTube links. Obviously, YouTube and Facebook are in direct competition, and Facebook is going to favor direct uploaded videos in the newsfeed. Use emojis whenever you can. This is the way that people communicate now, and you should use them in ways that make sense. This video also has subtle branding. So, I mean, if it were up to me, you wouldn't have any branding. It would be totally, you know, authentic and edgy and all of that. But we're marketers and we all understand the benefit of branding. So I think HSUS does a good job of doing this in a way that's not real in your face. But you remember seeing the logo. It has this edgy, interesting thumbnail. It's not overly produced. You don't have to have you know, all of your videos be professionally done and super expensive and take a lot of time anymore. I like to say that YouTube has drastically reduced the expectations on video quality. And so you can literally shoot videos with your iPhone now that will be more engaging and drive more action than something you would pay a lot of money for. And that's not to say that there's no place for that kind of content anymore, but it's not always necessary. And then really important, you don't need sound to watch it. Most people don't watch videos with sound anymore. Even if it auto plays with sound, they're going to mute it. I think it's because most people watch videos at work, but I don't know that for sure. But it's really important to have subtitles. And if you don't have them within the production of the video, you can easily upload what's called an SRT file that will translate and put the subtitles on the screen. And you can't see it, but the video is under 1 minute. That is super important. Again, those short attention spans. And there's a call to action at the end asking people to donate through a vanity URL that makes it very easy. Here, in our content strategy for HSUS, we outline the kind of content that does work, and that's through analyzing it over time and seeing how people react and seeing how, you know, the comments and the tone and all of that. So things like facts, statistics, urgency, PSA style statements. So I don't believe in animal testing, you know, things like that we found really worked in the types of content that they produced. And sorry, there was a slide on what doesn't work, but it's not coming up. Basically what I mentioned before, things that are ego driven, we have to post this because this person worked really hard on it or it'll make a partner happy. There are other ways to do that that will not penalize you in social media if you produce content and put out content that people don't interact with. So the anatomy of a social campaign, the first thing you want to do is brainstorm, strategize, and coordinate what you're doing. Then go into the creation mode of creating that relevant and shareable content. Make sure you're engaging both publicly and privately. So when people are commenting on your post, but also when they're messaging you through private messages. Track metrics, conversions, make sure that the content that you're putting out is tied to a business goal and that you're measuring that, and then reflect on the results and adapt for the next campaign that you do from what you learned. One of my favorite quotes of all time is engagement as a measurement of success is bullshit. I think that there are still a lot of people who are measuring the success of their social media efforts by how many fans and followers and such that they have. That doesn't mean anything in terms of success. In fact, A lot of companies find that they'll have a lot of fake likes or spam likes or things like that. That number does not tell you how successful you are. What tells you how successful you are conversion metrics like sales, donations, actions, downloads, anything that you can tie back to your business goals. And that's not to say that vanity metrics are not helpful and that you shouldn't be looking at them. Things like likes and shares and comments and visits. It tells you how well people are receiving your content. It does not tell you if they're doing what you want them to do. So measure both, but don't get stuck kind of on that success of having 10,000 likes on your page. Together, using them, you'll have a winning content strategy that you can continue to analyze and adapt. Last but not least, do not forget to prepare for the occasional crisis. I think any brand, including people who are in business for themselves, small businesses, anybody can have a crisis nowadays, especially with the proliferation of information pushed out in social media. So you want to make sure that if this happens to you, that you're as prepared as possible by knowing what to do, what not to do, and kind of the timeline to do it. So the thing about crisis, kind of this is happening right now content, is that anything timely automatically means that it's more relevant. So you need to stop what you're doing and jump on it. That goes for opportunistic crises. It also goes for the kind of negative crises. So this was a little bit of both. When Cecil the Lion got shot, HSUS was not tracking Cecil. We didn't have a campaign going on around it. But when this happened, we knew that we could tie this event that everybody was talking about to the issue of trophy hunting, which has been so hard to get people to care about in the past. It's not really a sexy topic. And so this was kind of our crisis communications plan that we developed for that. So it's important to be, again, looking out for those opportunities and figuring out if you can insert your brand into the conversation. My favorite quote of all time is social media is free like a puppy. If you have a puppy or any dog or any animal, really, you know that they are not free. They create messes and they take time and they need love and they need care and feeding and all of those things. And social media is the exact same way. Even though it does not cost any money to actually be on Facebook, the time and effort is certainly a cost to you. But if you do it right, it will pay off in the end. That's my presentation. I'd love to hear any questions you guys have. And if you are interested, I have a free 1-hour consultation you can sign up for on my website, as well as please visit my website and kind of see the other services I offer. And I'd love to work with you and hear any questions.
I'm going to scoot on first because I unmuted myself while you were talking. So as I asked everyone to say, I'm Nancy Russo. I'm a design director in New York City and Connecticut. My question, and I run the Creatives Roundtable. My question is regarding platform research. How do you do that? I mean, how do you research what is it? Are you researching your competitors? Are you researching where your clients are? How are you finding that information out?
So I actually have a template for each platform that I do research on, and they actually have the same questions. So it's, what are these people doing on this platform? What's the age demographic on the platform? What kind of conversations are already happening? There's kind of a list, a standard list of questions that I go through of what I'd like to know about people who use these platforms. And then I use that kind of information gathering to develop a strategy that outlines audience, goals, target market, basically, like a standard marketing plan, but it's platform specific.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? I can't see everyone while you're still sharing the screen. Can you stop sharing the screen and then go back into everyone? Okay. Anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Patrick.
Okay, I'm Patrick Sesko. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm a graphic designer and a brand strategist. And the question I have is about, I don't know what you call them, but the things like Buffer, these scheduling apps that people use, Buffer, TweetDeck, Hootsuite, etc. What is your take on that in terms of, obviously there's a lot of time that is required to do and manage your social media presence in a way that's going to be engaging and relevant. But what is your take on having content that's kind of scheduled? Because obviously if you're one person, like a lot of us are here, there's a lot of time that goes into that. So how can you use those in your social media presence without being just robotic and, not, looking like you're just posting other people's content or whatever?
That's a great question, because of course the number one barrier to social media is time. And the thing is, though, I am vehemently against using any kind of tool that claims to make things easier. And that's because social media is all about authenticity and engagement. And if you're using a tool to schedule posts, that means that you're not going to be around for the kind of aftermath of what happens after, with comments or questions or private messages or whatever. I understand, though, that a lot of people use them to save time. What I would recommend is using and you'll know this because we're working together, I put together a daily, monthly, weekly, and quarterly checklist of things that I need to do. And then I block off time in my calendar to do those things in those increments. So if one of my things is to develop evergreen content for the content bank on a monthly basis, I'll carve out 4 hours every month to just sit down and focus and brainstorm about content. And, you could use some of these tools, for example, queuing up posts. If that would help you save time, you could queue them up. I would just recommend against using them to actually post out, and certainly don't use any platform that just kind of posts the same thing to every single social media channel. Again, it goes back to that authenticity. People really value that on social media, and if they wanted to just read about things that you're doing or that you're interested in, they would go to your website, but they come to social media for interaction. So you want to be there for that and encourage that. There are tools that I use that are less about automation and more about information gathering, like TweetDeck. I've been using TweetDeck for like 12 years or however long it's been around. And that's because it makes finding hashtags and what people are saying easier. But tools that claim to automate are ones that I'm wary about.
I'm going to skip Gina for a minute and go to Marcy, who posted up about Recur Post. Can you comment on that, Marcy? And maybe Carie, you can tell us what you think, or if you know about it.
Well, we manage some of our clients' social media accounts because we're marketing and graphic design. And so I completely agree about needing to have the live posts and have that interaction going and be personable. There's also truth to having scheduled posts that are relative to your downloads and reposting of your blogs and just things that are already, content that you have, and you can have that in the queue. And the comment that I had here was we switched because we wanted to be be able to track and report back to a marketing committee. One of our clients that we switched over, and pretty much all they have are reports that they distribute in the nonprofit sector. And we can see a clear pattern of increase in the downloads because, and I really attribute it, it's the only thing that we changed, because to the switch to the recur posts, because they're happening at inconsistent times that we weren't scheduling. Like, it's just kind of picking on when it's going to schedule it. And the report downloads have increased. And it's the only way that we distribute this content. So it's not because we had more SEO content traffic. It is very much about the rescheduling these posts. So I think there's value in having these tools.
Gina, did you want to ask your question?
Hi, Carie. That was great. That was really, really good. Two questions. One is simple, one not so much. Video. Are you using software that you like to add a logo onto the video or text, the subtitles? And then question number two is in measuring metrics, not the vanity, but the other, conversions to sales and things like that. How do you know for your clients if what you're posting, if it's something of value that may not be a direct call to action by this, that something is converting people to sales? Because that's something with my clients where we can't, where we're not really sure what's helping other than, if we do something maybe on the website, we can track that they've clicked to purchase. But if we don't have those kind of clicks or links on a social media post, how do we know what kind of sales are happening?
So your first question about logos and subtitles and things like that. I work with video production companies. I don't produce videos for clients. So I'm not sure about the logo piece, but the subtitle piece is actually really easy to do. And Facebook will create what's called an SRT file for you if you want them to. So when you're uploading the video, there's an option that says, do you want them basically to like translate it for you? And then you can also go in frame by frame, and if they don't translate it correctly, they don't understand it or whatever, you can edit it. So that can all be done in the Facebook upload process.
Okay.
And I highly recommend if you don't have kind of that translation on the screen, like the example I showed, that you use that service that Facebook provides every single time.
Okay, great, thank you.
And for the tracking piece of it, are you using trackable URLs when you post pieces to Facebook and other social media platforms?
Yeah.
Okay. So at HSUS, we avoided using Bitly because a lot of people were very wary of clicking on Bitly links. You don't know what they're going to. They can be kind of spammy. So we used vanity URLs on Facebook that would then redirect to a page that had Google Analytics tracking on the end of it. And that way we were able to set up goals in Google Analytics to tell us actually if somebody clicked on that link and then made a donation, that it came from Facebook and came from that certain Facebook post. Okay. Now there's also the attribution piece of it. So let's say somebody clicks on a link on Facebook, goes to your website, decides not to buy something, bounces off, but then comes back later. That's where retargeting and attribution come into play. And there are ways that you can make sure that gets attributed back to Facebook by putting retargeting code on whatever website you're working with. And that's done through Google Analytics. The technicalities of that are a little bit over my head, but it can be done within the Google Analytics platform.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have another question? Nadine?
I apologize if this was missed. I skipped it for a minute, but did you go over the LinkedIn, any tips, I guess, on how to work with that platform?
You know what? I did not go through LinkedIn. It's probably something I should at least explain why in this presentation. The only success that I have had with LinkedIn is using their advertising service for job leads, basically, for getting people who want to find a new job. But there are certainly companies out there that are utilizing LinkedIn from a group page kind of community perspective. HSUS tried that, and the audience, it was an audience mismatch for them. So the audience was not, I guess the audience on LinkedIn is something like white men in their 50s or something like that. That is a complete target audience mismatch for HSUS. So again, it's kind of knowing who is using those platforms and making that call that if it's not a match, then you don't spend the time in it. But if it is a match for you, doing that platform research and then developing that platform strategy to coordinate with your goals.
Anyone else? Okay. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. If you want to learn more about us, I did put a link in the chat, which is creatives with an S, roundtable.com/videos. That'll show a sample of both a call like this as well as what we do on our monthly calls. And you can also send me an email if you want to be on these lunchtime chats. We do not open all of them up, but we will open some of them up. Our next one is on with an attorney talking about trademarking. And Carie, this was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I did put Carrie's link to her website on the chat as well. So you guys can copy that. I will send a follow-up email and it will have Carrie's information too. Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Carie.
Thanks, Carie.
Thanks, it was great.